Hello everybody, it's now the third day of the conference, which gets me really excited that we're still actually up and running and haven't been censored or had a big X notice on us or whatever. Basically, I'm being joined today by Khan again because I've decided Khan's my backbone and I will have him on this screen as much as possible. I will say that Khan is really marvellous, and so I'll trot him out. But I've also got Nicki, who later on today we're going to be looking at an interview I did with Nicki, and I'm really glad to have Nicki because she's a great supporter of us. Nicki at the moment has come in and on a leave. You know, it's half term, and I'm sure a lot of people are watching this on playback because it's half term. And the other thing that I wanted to say, I just wanted to explain, because as I say, Nicki's actually not been watching. The way these morning panels go is we just discuss a little bit about what went on the day before. We watch a video, so we actually then we talk to Nicki about the actual interview because she's here, and then we discuss what's coming up. And there is an actual change, but in the actual running order of things, it's just a change of presenter, but I'll explain that later. So if I actually now just let Nicki introduce herself and then Khan. Over to you, Nicki.
Hi, morning everyone. Pleasure to be invited here in respect of part of LGBT plus History Month. I've done my nails in honour of it, and so I'm the Women's Network Chair within the Trust, and I'm also my day job is as a service director, but my passion in everything I do is in equality and inclusion, so it's a real absolute privilege and an honour and a joy to be here this morning, so thank you for the invite, Jenny.
Now if we just go to Khan.
Hi everyone. So I'm Khan Purvis, Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Lead for Workforce, and it's my absolute pleasure to be here. And I would say this is really wonderful. Thank you so much, Jenny, for doing this. And it's just it's brilliant because actually as a gay man, you know, I'm feeling very welcome and included, and that is largely thanks to all my wonderful colleagues, but especially you.
So if I actually talk about yesterday, the interview we played yesterday was with Dan Hull, who was the last person I interviewed, and Nicki is the first person that I actually interviewed when I started this. So this interview, even though it actually looks as though we both little frogs in a pond grasping for air, is actually did actually show me how to which direction to go. And the funny thing was, it was actually a really good interview. That was basically that I just go and ah, and Nicki knows how to talk and has mastered the English language, which always makes me feel proud to be talking to people. But we'll just go through yesterday. We started with well, I'm saying we started with Khan was the first presentation, and he talked about civil partnerships. I'll come back to all this, but I'll just say the running order. Then we had Dr. Paul Giluli, who actually came, and he gave a fantastic presentation. I did check to see if it was up on the site at the moment, but it hasn't quite arrived there, but it will be soon. So I recommend everybody to watch that. We then had my favourite, well, all these psychologists are my favourite psychologists, so there isn't a favourite really, but we had Maddie and Georgina doing the basics of sexual orientation and gender identity, which was extremely good. And then I actually got to terrorise Khan for about an hour where I kept on putting him on the spot and making him sweat, which was also extremely enjoyable for me, but I think it was actually extremely informative as well. And we rolled it off with a panel where we had Serona Burgess actually talking about a job in it as well. These panels are actually are being shown, so that was enjoyable as well. The interview that we're going to play is actually already uploaded, and it's if you go into the I think it's just called movies or something like that. I should remember all these landmarks, but there were a couple of things that I do need to mention. If you're watching this, there are feedback forms somewhere. I should actually really know where, but unfortunately, I just know there's feedback forms. So there's feedback forms that you can actually complete, which we'd really love you to do so. And there's also a forum that it's at Nest Point. So if you click at Nest Point, you go into a forum. We'd love to have your comments. We'd also, if you do put a comment on there, because it's a forum, somebody can actually reply, and you can instigate a conversation. People are checking the forum. The forum is moderated, so if you want to put something and it's going to be offensive, well, it'll be deleted, unfortunately. For you, that is, not to the people that take offence, obviously. Now, I'm just going to actually, first of all, ask Carl what he thought about the day, and then I'll come to Nicki and ask what she thought about my interview before we actually watch it. So, Con, what did you think about yesterday?
Well, what can I say, Jenny? I'm a bit biased because I was one of your presenters, but actually, I'll be completely honest. When you first said, "Can you talk about civil partnership and marriage?" I thought, I'm not sure this can be very interesting. And actually, it turned out to be so personal and to involve all kinds of issues. And I actually watched it, and I was glad I'd recorded it. So I hope that's been had the same kind of impact with other people. But you've also had some fantastic other guest speakers, and you know, Dr. Galuli's one of my heroes, really. And I think just seeing him out there, really openly flying that flag and supporting all LGBT people, but also as a gay role model is brilliant. So thank you so much for actually doing this. I'm getting loads out of the conference, and can I say, because like a lot of people watching, my schedule is also really challenged, so there's going to be times where I'm going to use that playback feature a lot. So I've got several key things I'm desperate to watch, and I'm gonna but yeah, I think you've done a brilliant job with yesterday. Thank you.
I was just going to say, Con, did you get a chance yet to watch Katie's actual or other guest speakers interview? Just out of the fact that I got a lot out of that. Have you had a chance to see that yet?
So no, that is sadly it's one of the ones that I haven't yet managed to get in. I did briefly consider just blatantly lying for the benefit of the audience, but no, it is one that I'm passionate about watching though. And I have had feedback to it, so I've literally had colleagues say that was amazing. And one of the feedbacks that I've had is, I want to share this. I think it's so cool. Was that comparing your experiences with Katie's of gender identity services in the UK, decades apart, with nothing moving, and person actually said it blew my mind, and a few people have said about different segments it blew my mind. So yeah, I just kind of want to feed that back. I think that's fairly good as a comment.
It really blows my mind that people are listening, well, watching me and listening to me. I mean, I'm not being funny, but one of the actual facts of being trans in this world is that you spend a lot of time with people putting up with you. just actually looking at you, letting you present ideas, and it's then they'll turn around and say, and now what do you want to say, and just totally ignore you. Or you watch your ideas come into fruition about a few days later with somebody else taking ownership. But I've heard that is the same in all actual groups where minority groups this happens. So yeah, which I've learnt basically suddenly becoming involved in equality and diversity. It's very easy to think that because it's happening to you, that it's a very small world and it's just you. And when you actually look around, you suddenly realise that you might be unique, but people that are not so unique but are in minority groups tend to experience the same thing. I believe, and that was a long way. But next, I just wanted to, before we look at it, because this was one of my favourite interviews. It was one of the favourite interviews because one of the first things I did was I obviously sent it to Adam to sort it out and make it look presentable. But then I sent it to Khan and said, how fantastic is this? So, you know, that kind of thing. So what did you think of the experience? Because I was in a working office, and I just actually, I think you were, if you know what I mean, and we were nattering on Teams about which I believe they cut out catering, if I remember rightly, on the day.
Yeah, well, I feel like I need to manage expectations because I've not actually seen the interview. So for me, it was just a really good conversation about subject I'm really passionate about. I know people keep talking about passion a lot just this morning, but there are things in your life that really nourish you and that you feel really strongly about, and equality and inclusion is that for me. And so when you reached out and asked to do the interview, I was like, bit your hands off. But when it came to the day, I was quite nervous because you just sort of said it's not going to be scripted, we're just going to have a conversation. And so there was no idea of knowing where that would take us, what we would talk about. So it really was a genuine conversation. So I was sort of nervous and looking forward to seeing the interview, but also I think why I felt it important to join today is because it's really important that there are allies and that there are people who support the LGBTQ plus community in every sense within our society, within our workplace. So I felt I had a real duty to be present and visible as an ally, Jenny, in supporting the conference this week. So I'm really grateful, and I've been so impressed and overwhelmed with what you pulled together. I'm also really looking forward to watching it on the playbacks as well.
Yeah, I must admit I didn't get any better. I didn't script any of them. I just actually, I think it was about 2 minutes before the interview. Well, it was a bit longer than 2 minutes. I either grabbed Khan and said, what's a good question? We talk the questions, and then I ignore what Khan told me and go my own way, and kind of write them in that way there. And everybody, and it was nobody basically was. I think Dan was most probably the calmest, yeah, but nobody knew what they were in for. Yeah. Peter's one of the producers at the moment today, and he didn't know what he was, and he veers quite different to all the other interviews, which makes it actually quite enjoyable to watch. And that is actually being played tomorrow afternoon, which you know, so that'll be quite good. And now I think we better play the interview because it is 26 minutes long. Thank you. So hi, Nicki. You've actually agreed to actually talk to us a little bit about what you do and what it is to be a good ally. So
the first thing we're all interested to hear is, what do you actually do? What's your position and how did you get there?
Oh, well, thank you, Jenny, for the introduction, and real privilege to be here. So I'm a service director in Children and Young People Services within Norfolk and Waveney Care Group. And in addition to that, I'm also the Women's Network Equality Chair in the Trust. So that's sort of my day jobs. How I got here was a bit of a journey. So at 25, I found I was a single mum, pregnant with a daughter who was soon to turn 3, having to move back to Norfolk to live with my parents, and a realisation that actually I was going to need to get a career and support them. So I did an access course that enabled me to do a degree. So I did a law degree that then led to me having opportunities to volunteer with children and young people who sadly had been convicted of offences, so they were in the criminal justice system. But it was a real pivotal moment for me. I've been on a journey to train as a solicitor, but actually through working with young people and just hearing their life stories and the inequalities they'd faced, it just sort of gave me real passion and desire to have a role that would positively impact children and young people. So I graduated and then joined Norfolk Youth Offending Team, worked with young people in the prisons, and then wanted to divert my energy to prevention, so to support young people from preventing them going to prison and their siblings. So I did that for a number of years, and then ended up working for a families intervention project, so working with whole families to prevent intergenerational homelessness, worklessness, poverty, and entering the criminal justice system. And that I did that for about 5 years. I thoroughly enjoyed that. That was very, very positive job. And then I ended up working for Suffolk County Council, and then joined NSFT in 2015. At that point, to help support setting up a new service that was working across education, health, and social care, to work with children to prevent them being looked after, so going into care. And that leads me to where I am today, Jenny.
Yeah, well, I'm really glad that you're where you are today. The next question I got for you was, what do you feel makes a good ally, and what do you see as an ally actually ours? I think that if I look at it, you're chair of the women's group, I'm chair of the LGBT group, that we both require allies. In fact, every group that we have requires an ally. And so what do you see an ally as being?
So I think to have a bit of context is, I feel I've had allies in my life as a woman, and they've supported and lifted me up. And they've been male allies, they've been female allies. And I actually predominantly throughout my career was supported by really strong women and strong gay women. So for me, that's an area where I felt has been very important, that I'm promoting equality and inclusion for not just adults, but children who are identify as LGBTQ+. And so for me, being a good ally means that I'm challenging those inequalities, that I'm talking about it, that I'm raising the profile, and really, for me, representation matters. Feel really fortunate that in the care group I work, we have an equality lead, Maddie Johnson, who I know is going to be at the LGBTQ history event. And I think particularly for children, and young people, it's important to see representation whilst they're going through that journey of sort of identifying and thinking about, you know, their sexuality, but who they kind of aspire to be. So I feel I have a real responsibility as an equality chair that I'm promoting that, talking about that, and supporting, Jenny, you in your role and your network.
A lot of allies or people like the actual thought of being an ally, but that's it, because anybody can say, oh yes, I believe, but there's a little bit more to that. So what would you see as being an active ally?
I think it's being visible, so doing what we're doing now, Jenny, and modelling it. I think it's more than wearing a lanyard or a badge. I think it's challenging where you see inequalities or discrimination or bias, and it's calling it out. And I think that's at every level. I think it's ensuring that I feel really passionate about ensuring, like from when we're advertising posts to recruiting in the organisation, that we're really being explicit that we want diversity and difference, and that's shown from the advert to the panel to the way we interview to the support we provide when people join, and through the care that patients and our communities experience. So I think we need to be, as allies, really vocal. We need to step up and stand side by side to support our areas that have, so it might be yourself, for example, Jenny, it might be working with the BME network chairs, but I think together we have a responsibility as equality leads to kind of unite and amplify and support where there is inequality.
I agree with everything that you've just actually said. You've answered partially about this, but if somebody actually is subject to an inappropriate comment or jokes, and quite honestly, in my life, when I was transitioning, League of Gentlemen was the big thing, and there was a trans character in there called Barbara, who drove a taxi, talked with a very, very deep voice, and actually talked about having a genitalia removed. Now, every day that I went to work, people, well, one particular person used to actually relay everything that had happened in that program, etc. And years later actually apologized to me because they did not think they were being offensive. How would you actually tackle this? You know, what would you, sorry, what would you actually, how can an ally, you know, address this?
I think firstly that just sounds awful, Jenny, and I'm sorry that you experienced that. So I would tackle it by calling it out, naming it. I think having that conversation. I think there's been a lot in our media you've just described that has almost normalised really abnormal behaviours and discrimination. So yeah, I would challenge it, name it, and have a conversation. I also think we need to do more in respect of educating, and that's within the organisation, but also in society. I think there's been some recent dramas on TV that have invited those conversations. So It's a Sin, 4 Lives, where you see the sort of impact of institutional discrimination towards a minority group like the LGBTQ+ community. So I would certainly challenge it and almost, I think what I'm hopeful that I do at the moment is I'm already talking about equality and inclusion and LGBTQ plus rights within the area I'm responsible. So we've been really proactive in commissioning training for all the staff, so that I kind of have this mantra that we're setting out our stall, that if you want to work here, you need to sign up to these values and behaviours, because we want this to be an inclusive area, because I want the patients, so the children and young people, to experience that. So I know that's a long-winded way, but I would challenge it. I mean, but sort of personal disclosure, I have children who are gay and bisexual, so for me, it's really personal, and so I'm just really mindful if they had relatives or loved ones who identified with the LGBTQ plus community, how would they feel if somebody was talking to them in such a discriminatory, unkind way?
The next question was more about, and you answered slightly about it, but have you actually in your life ever been uncomfortable by how somebody has treated somebody?
Yes. I think in my 47 years, I would not have experienced both how I've been impacted by discrimination, but also observing people that I love, people that I've worked with, and yeah, I think it's it can be really upsetting. It also can kind of set that fire in your belly a bit, kind of stoke it up a bit to make you feel that you want to do more and shout a bit louder in respect of enabling equal rights, marching at Pride, for example.
You basically manage one of our services. So what do you see that your service, and actually, as I hope everybody in the NHS does for good practice, is actually improve and continue to improve the service that they actually offer? Obviously, we like to talk about evidence-based service and things like that, but if you look at the trans case, there's very little actually information, and if you actually look at the LGBT community as a whole, we don't tend to gather data, you know. So how do you see the future? I'm being long-winded now. How do you see the future of your service in regards to LGBT?
So really good questions. I think I was going to touch on when you were talking about the NHS. I think there needs to be far more investment. Certainly, I was going to say certainly in respect of transgender, but across the board, in respect of LGBTQ plus, definitely more research. I mean, my son's studying at UEA at the moment, and that's one thing he's sort of been raising, is about the lack of research in respect to the community and evidence based to support, but actually being a really vulnerable group, and that research does show that, and the correlation between poor mental health, particularly that when actually young people are normally kind of going through that, you know, am I gay, straight, bisexual, trans, you know, all through what are already really turbulent years and hormones and everything else. And actually, I'd be interested to know if you were doing your doctor's training or your psychology training or your nursing training, if there are any modules that talk about that and talk about what you need to consider, what adaptations you need to make, in respect of when you're working with young people who are LGBTQ+, because I imagine, if any, you know, it's probably a small little paragraph, but I'm happy to be challenged on that, and I'd happily be challenged on that. So I think there needs to be kind of more done at the training phase for professionals who are coming into working in the NHS. I think I have a responsibility as the service director that we have representation in the workforce as a starter, that we can provide training and support to the workforce so that they can really be open and accessible to young people who are LGBTQ+ within the service, who are using our services.
The term gender dysphoria, I was diagnosed with gender dysphoria, and it's been along for ages. Now, everybody used to actually, in Britain, there's two actual manuals. Well, there's one manual in Britain and there's one manual in America. In America, it's called the Diagnostic Statistics Manual. In Britain now, it's the internet. I can't remember what it is, but it was the ICD-10. It's now changed its name to, or it has been changed to the ICD-11. They are reclassifying gender dysphoria, or it might be gender identity. No, I think it's gender dysphoria, to gender incongruence. And also they're moving it from the mental disorders, which it should never have been in the first place, but they're putting it in sexual health. Now, one of the big problems with actually explaining gender identity, gender, and all these things is everybody just goes back to biological sex. Now, most trans people will just say, yes, if you're biologically born a man, you've got all the cells of being a man. Nobody ever disputes this. Yeah, it doesn't mean to say you've got to be in love and really happy with this. And the same, I suppose, if you're a trans man that was biologically born a female. By putting it with sexual health, I'm feeling that this actually just throws it back into the we'll all talk about what sex you're born as to actually describe it. But by changing the name from gender dysphoria, which simply was just confused about your gender, yeah, to incongruency, which basically means that you're separated. I mean, do you think this actual syntax will have a problem in future, because you look after young people, etc., in them actually obtaining the treatment they need?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I'm curious, Jenny, where do you think it should sit?
Well, I actually don't think it should sit with doctors. I am not actually funny, but when I actually started my journey, or my journey of transition that ended in the early 2000s, the first person I actually had to see was a psychiatrist to say that I did not have a mental disorder. Because I was in Lancashire, then I had to see a psychiatrist that said that I didn't have a sexual perversion, which was a bit strange. But anyway, so everything, and so they were saying I was not mentally ill. You know, at this time when I had everything done, that personality disorders weren't covered under the Mental Health Act, but I do not actually believe it's a personality disorder anyway. I think it's more a case of I do believe in males. Can I say in males? I'm not 100% sure about females, because I'm not female and I'm old, yeah, and haven't really gone into it. That there's a thing that it's set in the hippocampus of the brain before you're born, and so I'm not. So I don't see why there's such a dependence on psychiatrists, and in my lifetime I've met quite a few prejudiced doctors, in their hands when it's not. Also, if I had lots of money, I could just pay and now just cut corners left, right and centre, which makes a mockery of the whole system, especially when the best way to actually ensure that somebody needs the operation goes through all the recommended tests, etc., that a gender identity clinic can actually offer. So with me, I think it should be that you see therapists in a gender identity clinic, but it should not be solely in the hands of psychiatrists. Because why is it in the hands of psychiatrists when you do not have a mental illness? But that's my personal view. I mean, and also the other thing is that because you'll be taking hormones, you refer to an endocrinologist who, apart from prescribing the actual hormones, has nothing actually to do with you. And I think that's how doctors should relate. The new Gender Recognition Act also has you going through a panel of physicians. Why? I mean, they expect me now, because I mean, I had the operation before I was expected to have the certificate, to go back to a panel of physicians, which is the last thing I want to do. But that is basically how I see it, and that's well done. But I'm meant to be interviewing you, not you interviewing me.
But I think that's an example, isn't it? Is who makes those decisions. It's not developing it with the experts, which the experts are those people who have gone through those transitions. Do you know what I mean? That's why I think we're in a society that always wants to kind of impose a medical model.
No, I agree. And it's also, if you don't understand it, there must be something wrong.
Yeah.
It's frightening. Yeah.
And I think the fact that we've still got the legislation hasn't been changed in respect of conversion. I saw Canada has changed. I mean, it's archaic, isn't it? Conversion therapy.
I think when we were speaking before this, I told you I watched a lot of trans YouTube and anti-trans YouTube, and in one of the things that I watched, I heard the person say that going to a gender identity clinic was basically the medical profession performing conversion therapy on gay people, which is just actually ludicrous. But anyway, but everybody's can I say, everybody is entitled to their own beliefs, and I would not knock anybody for actually believing that way. I just don't really want them to actually include me in to let me know of their beliefs. I prefer it if they just kept them to themselves. So I'll come further what they call it, because we got very heavy there, and it's what they call it. My life is always about having fun, enjoying myself, yeah, and not caring. So what do you call it? So I did say I had a last actual question for you. How would you deal with a trans woman being openly accepted into the women's group you run?
So firstly, trans women and women are all welcome to the Women's Network. So it's an open and inclusive group, and we also encourage allies as well. So I think if anybody had reservations in respect to being, if they were a trans woman about joining, I would invite them to have a conversation with me, and hopefully that could allay some of their fears or questions or curiosity in respect of the Women's Network. But it is very much an open and inclusive network. So you would be very welcome, Jenny. And I don't know about you, but I've always lived my life to be kind and compassionate and treat others as I would want to be treated myself. I think where I think I've got a duty of care to be a very loud ally is just seeing the impact on the LGBTQ plus community in the last 2 years and the increase in hate crime, and actually wanting people to be shouting about that and being kind of a call to action to protect the community. So I'm an ideologist, but I'm also really passionate, and I get very upset and want to kind of, yeah, have some proactive action to deal with what I see, the discrimination that's happening and the harm.
I should wrap that up on a really positive note, and thank you for sharing with us. It's been wonderful.
Oh, thank you. It's been wonderful. Thank you, Jenny.
So I was trying to talk there and be muted at the same time, which is mostly good for you, but not so good for me, really. Can I just say I hate watching myself on these actual videos, but I loved it, yeah. And that was one of the reasons that I will be very cautious in ever interviewing Nicki again, the way she just actually tricked me into answering my own questions, my own evil questions, which was even worse. But anyway, that was a great experience. Somebody's actually written in the comments, Nicki, that they love your nails and they're thanking you for supporting us in the time off. It's anonymous, but that is actually brilliant. Before I talk to you, Nicki, though, and we've got a very long question for a person called Chris, who his pronouns are he, him, his. He says, I totally agree. As a psychiatric nurse, it is wholly important. It is wholly important to be active, visible, and supportive. I'm just going to read this to get the gist of the question. To the young generation. Times have changed from the 80s and the 90s. Can I say that times have changed from the 60s and the 70s as well? Yeah, if you remember the 60s and the 70s. Well, everybody on this panel is actually shaking their head. I remember the 60s and the 70s. I was left-handed and I was actually picked on for being left-handed as well, you know, so yeah. From what I can actually say, I'm just going to actually look at the actual the last bit of it, which is basically about the youth and young people. So it's what do you call it? And are fully educated and advised is how to support LGBT plus children and young people. Chris feels sad that there is a population of staff who wear an example of the rainbow badge at it because it's pretty and not the real reason. Oh yeah, there's actually, I don't think a lot of people, I've got the gist now. I'm slow, old and short-sighted, so there's loads of reasons why I have a problem with a big long question. But anyway, after saying that, I do not the badge. Yeah, which we've actually, I did say, Alex Matheson has got a personal problem who was going to become, who's the project manager of the second phase of the badge launch. We've now got Lawrence Webb, who has agreed. Well, Alex asked if Lawrence would take over, and they've agreed. So they'll be doing the presentation this afternoon, and they will also be in the panel when we come to the 3 o'clock panel. But going back to the badge, basically, because I like to hear my voice go on for ages, we're never actually saying anything. But going back to the actual badge, yeah, a lot of people thought it was more a badge in there, a pin badge for the collection, just so they could stick it on to the lanyards. When they made a declaration to get the badge, you had to sign to say it, and Nicki is going to save me because she wants to talk more about the badge than actually obviously I do. So I'll just actually let Nicki speak. Nicki?
Thanks, Jenny. I'm going to say something about the badge because I've had conversations with Khan about the badge and the lanyard, but I've also had conversations with my gay son. So I was noticing what the person in the message was, that mass generalisation, that white, middle-aged, straight men were wearing the badge and the lanyard. And I was thinking, you know, are they really signing up to be allies? Do they really know what it means by wearing the badge? And it's so much more than just wearing a symbol. And I'll hand over to Carl in a second, but my son, who is a young gay man, said to me, but Mum, that makes a difference to me. If I were to go and meet someone in the NHS for treatment where I'm feeling vulnerable and I see visibly that they're wearing a badge, and that completely kind of like he turns me on my heels because you know, it's for him, it's for, you know, people who identify with the community in respect of how it matters for them. Yeah, so I just wanted to share about that because I'd had similar feelings and thoughts around, you know, yes, we can have a pledge, but we hold people to their pledge in respect of what it means. But I know Khan, because he and I have had many conversations about this, will have something to say.
Yeah, no, and yeah, absolutely, Nicki. I think there is always going to be a slight mismatch between, you know, in an ideal world, the moment someone had done something anti-LGBT or had just really failed to do anything to support LGBT people, it would be flagged and you'd be able to have a conversation with them and say either, you know, this is what this means and we'd like you to do that, please. Or if they really had no intention, you would be able to remove that badge. So it can actually, in some cases, be a double-edged sword because there will be people out there, it's not an ideal world, who have let someone down or who have actually expressed a homophobic view or, you know, literally watched a kind of like a banter situation go unchecked, and people will know that and they'll also see them wear the badge. So that's, I think, a downside that you can't really get around, but there is the potential, of course, for people to challenge, and I think while I would like to hope that it's not the case that we would see masses of people have their rainbow badge removed or having people handed in, I think it would be appropriate if you think that someone's really let you down to have that conversation and not feel awkward about having it. I think I agree with you as well that the visibility point is really powerful. So for me, I haven't always had actually the best experience of NHS services. So I have had homophobia when I've had to go through a cardiac consult, and I will share this, but at one point it became clear that because my partner at the time was quite a bit older, that there was some concern with the person that was seeing me that I might have been basically swept up into a gay relationship against my will, and that was a very strange scenario. It was a really awful experience, to be honest. So I can say that if you do see somebody wearing that badge or a lanyard, it does come with that sense of or like relief that, you know, that's very unlikely to be the case. So I can also see the positive. All the other thing to mention is, of course, we are now in Rainbow Badge Phase 2 pilot. So we are going to be getting some really expert guidance on what this needs to mean for our organisation. And while we're talking about badges and symbols, the new Rainbow badge for Phase 2 will be the Progress Pride symbol. So it's going to be really explicitly an inclusive badge, because I know that there's been a confusion with, you know, the NHS rainbow, etc. Oh, I think Jenny, do you want to come back in?
Yeah, before I forget what I was going to actually say, which is one of the actual things that it's just two things, and it's not meant to be political, but Matt Hancock throughout the pandemic wore what was actually a badge that was basically the rainbow badge, but it was actually taken and nobody actually contradicted that it was a sign for the NHS. Nobody said, no, this is actually representing, which is the actual fact you're supposed to do if you're wearing this badge. You're not supposed to say, oh yes, it's about something else. So they actually adopted that. Can I also say that YouGov have produced a survey where they actually it was about a couple of thousand people. It might have been a few less, and it was in relation to how attitudes towards trans people. Now, I said I wasn't being political, but if you were over 65, or even if you're over 50, I think there was less chance you actually agreed. If you've voted to actually, and I don't know why they asked this, but if you wanted to leave Europe, so you're a Brexit, you did not believe in rights for trans people, and if you were conservative, yeah, you didn't believe in rights for, what do you call it? So it was kind of Nick was, and this isn't political, but he was representing a party that did not believe in rights for trans people, wearing a trans pledge badge, and did not correct anybody. So I think it also starts to muddy in the waters when things like that happen. And I'm sorry that that sounds political, because it's not meant to be, because I don't think Labour have a good track record of trans people, neither. Yeah, so it's just an observation. You can start back, because I do want to press basically it is important, Phase 2, that we've discussed, and we keep on having discussions with the people that are going to be assessing us, don't we? So I'll hand back to Khan.
Yeah, thanks, Jenny. I guess just in case anyone out there is thinking, oh, hang on a minute, you know, I vote for that party, whatever. And I think it's important to say that it doesn't just go along with the fact that you support a party or that you think this is the right choice for the country or whatever. I think there are individual attitudes and beliefs that go along for some people with and fit nicely with those other things, and for other people that's just absolutely not the case. And yeah, I think I'd like to count myself as one of your politically diverse allies on that score, but I also like to think that I'm fully LGBT inclusive, and yeah, it is, but it is fascinating, isn't it? I think from the point of view of being in an LGBT community, you're just yourself, but then you get into, you just open the door and walk out into the world, or you turn on the news channel, and lots of other people are politicizing who you are and what rights you should have. So that, I think that for me is like what that feels and looks like.
I would like to actually come back in. Can I actually say that we have got a question from Chris? Basically, he did like your answer, Nicki, and it fills in with a lot of hope, and actually having cancer treatment, it actually made him feel more at ease seeing people wearing the badges. So I'm really good. I'm also being asked if we, Con's already replying to this post because we're coming near to the end anyway. Basically, Chris, Con will know when the progress badges come in. I've got no actual clue, even though I do talk to people. I think it's having a butterfly type brain. Can I say though, what we've got to come today, because we've got about 3 minutes left of this bit. We basically done this bit. We're going to move into a rerun of non-binary 101, which is really, really important. Then I'm going to be doing a... Oh no, I'm ringing the... Am I ringing? Yeah, I'm ringing the right thing. Oh, Peter, actually, what do you got? People won't know this. I've got little post-its all over my place. I think I've got Alzheimer's, quite honestly, because I've got everything with post-its at the moment written down. And I was thinking Wednesday was tomorrow. It is today. So I'm doing a presentation. Basically a bleak one, so I'm not going to go into that much. It'll be, I hope it's enjoyable, but it's on a very bleak actual, well, the name of the actual presentation, you should not laugh, is trans death is exaggerated, isn't it? So it's a very actually worrying topic, really, when you actually think about it. And it was quite horrendous to write, or to actually script what I was going to say, and then it all went to pot. So it'll definitely be interesting that I actually survive it. After that, I am actually doing an interview with Peter, and we'll be playing. I'll be talking to him, and then we'll be playing the actual the interview, just like we've done with Nicki, which is a really good one because it went in a strange actual a strange direction. Then we've got Lawrence speaking basically about the rainbow badge second phase. I do believe that Sammy, she is going to start actually posting a link to the actual forums up, because the moderators should be doing that so they can actually sign in and complete them, which is really happy because she's always on top of things. Can I say that? And can I thank both Sammy and Peter for their contribution for this session and for their future contributions.